Hello, everyone, and welcome back. It is very nice to see you. I have a very special guest for everyone today and a very special topic. We're focused on the healthy month that is coming up. We're looking through the American Lifestyle magazine, reading all the healthy recipes that are in there, reading about taking good care of ourselves, and wanted to share some very special conversations with you. And today, we do have a very special conversation to share with you. I have Jennifer Iserloh. She is the author of the Superfood Alchemist book. That is her latest book. She's written over 50 books, many articles in interesting magazines. Jennifer can tell us more about those. Her website is The Skinny Chef, and you can search for Jennifer there and all the books that she's written. So I would like to thank her for her time before she starts speaking to us, because we really do appreciate it. I think you'll find the conversation really interested. I was joking around with Jennifer just before we started that I've never met a cheeseburger I don't like, so I really am interested in having a good conversation about eating what you'd like, but also working in some of the excellent ideas that Jennifer has for us. So Jennifer, thank you for joining us. Please introduce yourself to everyone. Tell them, again, your website so that I make sure I've given the correct website, and we'll get into our conversation.
It's such a pleasure talking with you as always. And like you, I too have never met a cheeseburger that I didn't like. I actually grew up on a lot of meat and potatoes. I still eat meat and I still enjoy it. We can definitely talk about how to do it the healthier way. And, for more information on me, you can go to skinnychef.com, and, my books are there and there's more information. But yeah, it's not really about giving up all the things you love. It's about how do you make healthier foods more delicious and how do you make them work for you?
Okay, well, and we'll jump right into that because we said that we'd start with someone like me who is cooking. I'd like to not have to say cook every night because, well, as you know, I have a job, Jennifer, and so many of us talking with each other right now have work that we're doing that we're focused on. Maybe that isn't in the cooking area all of the time. So cooking once, but making it more than one meal. Talk about repurposing or the ideas they might have, what we can cook and use multiple times.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm a household of two. It's just me and my husband. So whenever I cook, I always think about how can I cook a recipe that serves at least 4 or 6 so that I have leftovers. But I also tend to make things that taste great as leftovers. Usually fish isn't great as a leftover unless it's a delicious salmon. I mean, salmon cold is pretty good, but doing something like a vegetable and a protein is always great. So I recently just made this delicious cauliflower dish. I called it the Mediterranean Cauliflower. I kind of made it up, but it has capers and lemons, onions, and you just saute everything in a skillet, and it is amazing cold. I can't wait to serve that at our beach house this summer. And you normally wouldn't think, oh, cold cauliflower, but because of the lemon and all the seasonings and flavorings I put on it, it just reminded me of something that Italians would serve at a buffet. So I'm always looking for recipes like that. What can I have cold, and then what can I have left over the next day? So of course, with something like that, I would do a nice flank steak that would serve more than 3 people. Flank steak is also delicious cold, or you could turn that into a sandwich and put a little barbecue sauce. So when you do a big protein like that, that's plain, there's a lot of different ways you can dress it up the following day. Roasting a chicken is another great example. How to use a leftover meat. You may toss it in some chicken broth with some chopped up carrots and make a soup the next day if somebody's feeling under the weather, or you might turn it into a chicken salad and maybe chop a little raw cauliflower in there to get a little more nutrition. So there's a lot of ways to cook twice and repurpose it. And, most of the things, like I think people think of things like lasagna, nothing against lasagna, but, that's a really carb heavy meal. I might make that on a Sunday if I'm having people over. And of course it's delicious leftover, but I think more vegetables, proteins, and maybe a soup. And that's, my tips for the cook once and eat twice.
Okay. And I'm hungry already. Okay, just to be clear about that, just in talking about this. So we were going, and we will touch on cooking ahead. I just want to point out for everyone, because this is something that isn't in my lane. I'm a financial advisor. These challenges, I'll say, of cooking healthy and having meals that are available beyond just one evening at a time. It's just an awesome thing to think about. And again, spending the month, I'll say, mirroring what we have in the American Lifestyle magazine for clients, I just think it's really great timing. And one thing that we agreed on is that, and you're excellent about doing it, and that's part of the reason for our discussion, is we're not going to demonize anything. We're going to make sure that we're presenting maybe some additional ideas, maybe everything that we talk about here, all the awesome people that are listening to it right now know a lot of it, but if we can share something that you and I have talked about in the past or in your cookbooks, then we've helped a little bit, and it's outside the realm of being a financial advisor. So I hope everyone appreciates that we're going to have a good conversation about all these foods, and I'll just be hungry the entire time that we're talking about it. So
you also know my cooking. I've cooked for you, so you know what you're missing.
Yes, as a matter of fact, you have, and I appreciate that. I met all the dogs, which that was awesome. Now, and aside, how many dogs are at the beach with you now?
Actually, only one. Our big boy passed. He was
I'm sorry.
So, yeah, it's been a sad transition. And they're both foodies, but the big boy was the one that, really was my companion in the kitchen. But we're looking forward to maybe getting a puppy this summer. And bulldogs love food. They are, definite kitchen hounds. So they're always there to cheer me on as I'm cooking and doing my various projects.
Well, there's some bulldog somewhere that's about to get fed really well. So let's we'll go with that. Cook ahead. That's another topic that you suggested we talk about, Jennifer, is cooking ahead, which is obviously tied into cook once, make additional meals out of that once. But cooking ahead, why don't you define that, what that means to you, and how far ahead can you cook?
Yeah, and I think a big piece of that is prepping. So I think that's where people really get tripped up with. They come home from work, they're starving, and they're like, I don't have the energy to cut up these vegetables and clean this chicken. I need to eat now because I'm in panic mode. My insulin is tanking. So a lot of times what I do is when I'm cooking, I prep things for 2 different meals. So if I'm doing cauliflower, I'll chop 2 heads of cauliflower and save both florets. I'll cook 1 head for that Mediterranean cauliflower I mentioned, or, maybe I'm doing a cauliflower mac and cheese instead of using noodles. And then the second head I have ready for the next day. So there's a lot of do ahead things that, you can utilize so that you're not stuck at the last minute, struggling to get the meal on the table when everybody's starving. One of the things is just to get the vegetables already chopped up at the grocery store. They have it. They have the thing where they do the vegetable zoodles that are already ready for you. If you want to do like zucchini noodles instead of a pasta, I mean, you can absolutely still mix in some pasta with that. If you want chopped up cauliflower, onions, carrots. So don't let the prep work get the better of you. Now, of course, as a chef, I usually do my own prep work, but even sometimes me, if I go to the gym and come home, I need to eat usually within a half an hour. Like I'm starving after I'm boxing. So I make sure that I have the protein prepped. I'll trim the chicken, I'll wash it, I'll put it on a plate, put saran wrap so that it's ready to go. But then sometimes I cook it ahead too. So I know if I'm going to come home and I want to do something like, really savory chicken dish, I will bake it in the oven or I'll grill it, I'll season it up. So I have a bunch of chicken already cooked off. I might do that in the morning. And then when I come home, I just cook the cauliflower. Or if I'm really in a pinch, I will just saute some greens. That is the fastest, healthiest side dish you can ever do. You can get a big box of organic greens. You can do kale, spinach. You can even do mixed greens and just put a little olive oil in the skillet, literally reach in handfuls, throw them in the skillet, put a lid on it, toss it. In 2 minutes, you have a side dish on the table. And then if you've already cooked your protein, you're ready to go. And there's a lot of proteins you could cook ahead of time. You can cook a steak. You can do a flank steak. If you're into braising or slow cooking, and I know braising might sound scary for people that don't cook, but all it is putting meat in liquid and putting it in the oven. So if you do something like a brisket, which I cooked this weekend, which was divine, and I did soy sauce and balsamic, and I just baked it in the oven for 3 hours. There's no, you don't have to be a genius to do it. And then that brisket has really been great for the last 3 days for me and my husband. He thinly sliced it, made a sandwich with barbecue sauce. I put it on top of a salad, so there's different ways. So he can do a little more carbohydrate than I can without gaining gaining a lot of weight. So he does a little bit of gluten-free bread and I put mine on salad. So, there's different ways to satisfy different members in the family too, if you're cooking the proteins and prepping the vegetables ahead of time. And then, if you do want to have your carbs, totally fine. I mean, one thing I always say is, you should find out if you have gluten sensitivity, because that's a big thing. And there's tons of substitutions if you do. So 1 out of 10 people do have issues with gluten. And gluten is just the protein that's in wheat, rye, and barley. So the problem is if you have a sensitivity, it can be inflaming your body and create a lot of gut issues, brain fog. It can create aches and pains and even skin problems and weight problems. So that's the only thing if you're going to do, a carbohydrate. But the reason why I focus on the protein and greens so much is that's really where we're getting most of our nutrition. And that's also the best way to fill you up the most nutritious way.
And all that brain food. And I know the brain fog, it reaches all of us, no matter age or anything. It just does. So healthy, those are healthy options. Again, I'm out of my lane here as it applies to planning, but I will be interested in some good planning tips for a week's menu, we'll say. But before I get there, I'm going to ask, now you talked about braising, sauteing, help a guy out.
Sure. Okay.
What's sauteing? What does that mean?
Yeah, so sauteing is a French term that just means, sauté means to jump. So it's kind of like, when olive oil pops or jumps in a skillet. But sauteing is just to brown something. And so whenever you're working with protein, it doesn't matter if it's a white protein like chicken, or you're working, with fish or beef. And I actually eat a lot of beef because I'm iron deficient, and we can talk about healthier ways to do beef. But you always want to make sure that you get a nice sear on it, and it has to be nicely brown to give that flavor. And it's where the surface of the meat actually caramelizes. So the first step is to warm your skillet for at least a minute or so over medium-high heat. I don't heat it too high because I saute in olive oil. If you're going to do a higher smoke point oil, you can, but unfortunately, a lot of the higher smoke point oils like canola can inflame your body. So this also kind of gets back to, how do you swap out healthy ingredients? You want to do more like olive oil or avocado oil. So medium-high heat, a minute on the skillet, then you add the oil, and then you're going to add your meat. But you want to season your meat first with salt. Beef needs more salt than chicken because chicken is naturally a saltier meat. And I used to run a lot of nutritionals for my job. So I was really surprised how low sodium beef is. So you have to add probably almost double the amount of salt if you're going to cook beef. So season your beef, heat your skillet, put about a tablespoon of olive oil. That's all you need. You don't want to put too much oil because it'll fry it, but you won't get the same brown crust. You add your meat, don't move it. That's the other secret. And then let it set for maybe 3 to 5 minutes till it gets that golden crust. Then flip it, and then in the oven from anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes. Chicken breasts need about 15 minutes. Filet mignon, maybe 5 minutes. And I preheat the oven to 400 degrees. Now that's how we do it in the restaurant. So I'm restaurant trained. The meat comes out juicy, perfect every time. If you cook it all the way in the skillet to completion, it gets stringy. So I use 2 forms of heat. I do it the fancy way, but really it's easy. You just slide the whole skillet into the oven. Just make sure that you have that tea towel so that you don't burn the dickens out of your hand when you take it out.
I'm guilty. I've burned everything. Forearms, top of the thumb, top of the hand, bottom of the hand. I've grabbed.
I burned the hair on my arm.
I'm trying.
Okay,
your hair, is that what you said?
Yeah, I used to have just very smooth arms because I worked in New York City kitchens and I worked the grill and I never had any hair on my arm.
That's funny. Yeah, so you're like a welder. That's going back to the old, some referencing old work that I did, like being a welder. You burn everything off there. So you did say that you'll share good tips for planning for a menu for the week, but I just want to throw one thing out there. I missed mentioning, but you threw kale into the discussion just a few minutes ago. You are the author of 50 Shades of Kale. That's kind of a funny name, and I'll just leave it there, but that's a good one, 50 Shades of Kale.
Yeah, so I created that book with my friend, Dr. Drew Ramsey, who is a psychiatrist in Manhattan, and he works a lot with the concept of eating to beat depression. So a lot of people have brain fog, anxiety, and are feeling blue because they actually have nutritional deficiencies. And, people don't know because unfortunately nutrition, there's a lot of conflicting information out there. And I know even when I got tested, I had some nutritional deficiencies based on my genetics as well. So, the reason why we wrote that book is we wanted to make a food like kale very sexy. And so he came up with the title, which I thought was brilliant. So the book is full of recipes that are almost as delicious as the movie, but in different ways. And they're very nutritious too. So that's really the at the core, the epitome of what I teach is food should be tempting. It should be sexy, but it should nourish you too. So it's like, how do you take a food like kale? So we picked kale because kale is probably the best thing you could ever put in your body. And one of the reasons is because it has these detoxifying compounds in it. Things like glucosinolates, these are the fancy words for them, glutathione. These are the sulfur, like the stinky compounds, but these things majorly detox your body. So that's one of the reasons we want to get it in. And what a lot of people don't know is our environment is 50 times more toxic than it was even 100 years ago. So we have industrial plastics in our environment. We have a lot of pollutions. We have things like heavy metals in our water. We even have things like estrogen in our water. So this is people are getting overloaded with these things that we need to get out of our body. So this is why we eat vegetables, but it's not just any vegetables. It has to be superfood vegetables that are really high in special compounds. So celery is really wimpy when it comes to nutrition compared to kale. Nothing against celery, you can eat it, but if you could stir a little kale into your soup, then you've got it going on. So you were asking me about good tips for planning a menu. So what I usually think is I like variety. I don't want to eat the same protein every day or the same vegetables. So usually if you think about giving yourself different proteins with different vegetables throughout the day, and the way I do it is I kind of straddle between what I want to eat and what I know will nourish me. So meanwhile, I'm thinking, I really want steak frites with like peppercorn sauce, but I'm not going to run out to the restaurant and get steak frites because I want to be healthy. Maybe I'll do that on the weekend. So I'll do, a steak with a peppercorn sauce and I'll saute some kale on the side. So that'll be one meal. And then if I want to do meat twice, I'll just buy 2 steaks. And then maybe I'll do steaks with, some sauteed peppers and onions and make it simple. Maybe I'll make a pepper and onion sandwich for my husband, and I'll do mine in a lettuce wrap, for example. So now I know I have 2 red meats. So I'm not going to do too much red meat in one week. I might do that like a Monday and a Friday. And then I think about other proteins and vegetables I can put in. So I probably put a chicken in there, a fish in there. Now I've done kale. I try to eat a lot of vegetables from the cruciferous family. So those are all the ones that have kind of that sulfurous odor to them, like broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, watercress. So I might do, a roasted lemon chicken. I might do a chicken marsala with mushrooms and then just do some steamed broccoli on the side. I can make it really simple. And then the next night I might do instead of a macaroni and cheese, I'll do a grass-fed cheese with cauliflower, and then I'll serve that up with a piece of cod. So I'm always thinking how I could take the same ingredients and just switch up the flavorings, but also give myself variety. So I have 3 different proteins. Those proteins all have different nutritional profiles. The fish may have some omega-3s. Actually, the beef I eat has omega-3 too, because I do grass-fed, and then the chicken is high in B12. So I'm kind of toggling those vegetables. And then anything else in terms of a carb that I might want to, serve on the side, maybe a sweet potato, maybe I'm feeling naughty and I'll do some French fries. That might be on the weekend. Or maybe, I might even just do a handful of gluten-free crackers. But the carb is always the last consideration because nobody ever said I don't have enough carbs in my.
You're right. Yeah, that's just a natural part. I think I'm living right now on bread and peanut butter for the last couple of days. So that's probably not the best way to go about things. And
for you can just do 3 proteins and cook for 2 and then eat it again the next day, or cook for 3, so that maybe you just do steak and a fish and then maybe you leave the chicken for the weekend, so that you cook on Monday, and then you eat the leftovers Tuesday, then you cook on Wednesday, eat the leftovers on Thursday. And then in between there, you don't have to eat everything cooked. I always have a salad every day, and the salad is going to have something on there that's going to fill me up. So I might do some pasture-raised bacon, and I'd already cooked that bacon ahead of time and just have it in my fridge ready to go. I'll do olives. I'll do artichokes marinated in oil. I'll do some good quality tuna. So I have like different things I can put on different salads throughout the week. Red bell pepper, roasted red bell pepper. Those things you can just store by. They're already ready to go in the containers. You just drain them, and then, you toggle those meals with salads for lunch.
Well, I just have to pause there for a moment. We're 24 minutes into our conversation, and you said something outstanding just a moment ago. Bacon. It's just if you can work bacon into your meals or some part of the week's pre-planned menu. I'm pre-planning the menu. I just have to ask, are you someone who writes down the pre-planned menu, or is it just something where you go to the grocery store and you say, all right, these are the things I'm planning on making, or are you someone who sits down and actually plans it out?
No, I'm more like Top Chef. I open my fridge, whatever's in there, whip it together. But that's just from years of cooking and you know, but you can absolutely plan ahead. And what's a good idea is just to really have a nice collection of go-to recipes, but you also want recipes that don't have a lot of ingredients so that you could put them together, you know, quickly. And if there's a way that you really like to cook a certain vegetable, you have a broccoli dish that you're in love with, and there's certain ingredients in there like, you know, olives, lemon, maybe there's parsley, you can think, how can I make this Mexican? Would be easy. It would be cilantro, a little bit of salsa, and lime. So there's a lot of ways to change up the flavorings, but once you kind of have your stable of go-to recipes, just think about how you can kind of switch those up. And then also think about having things in your fridge that just are not cooked that you can eat, that you could throw together, like that salad idea. And I always have boxes of pre-washed organic greens in my fridge at all times. So I usually have 3 different types. I have baby spinach, and my husband will come and make a baby spinach smoothie. He'll put mango in it. He'll do his protein powder. We put fiber in it. He does hazelnuts because he likes to be exotic, but you can do any nuts. So you have options for things that are no cook, because really you should only be cooking one meal a day because people just don't have time, and you should be able to throw that meal together in a half an hour.
Very cool. All right, so that leads to this, since we have the pre-planned menu. We didn't even set it up this way, but beautifully leads to the 5 healthiest ingredients everyone should stock or shop for.
Yeah. So number 1, of course, at the top of my list is cruciferous vegetables. And I do have a few kale haters out there. So what I say to them is, if you're turned off by kale, you haven't had it cooked the right way, or you're getting kale that's too big and mature. So when kale matures, it can become very tough. So if you get baby kale, that's a salad kale, it's tender, delicious. You can eat it raw. You can even saute it. It will change your life. So that's the first thing, cruciferous. So cruciferous just means cross. And they're vegetables where their flowers look like little crosses. So the ones I mentioned, which were broccoli, Brussels sprouts, watercress, kale, of course, cauliflower. So those ones are the major detoxifiers. And then next there's greens. So romaine and spinach are 2 greens that I love, highly nutritious. Yes, when I go out to eat at a steakhouse, I'll have an iceberg lettuce salad, but iceberg doesn't really have any nutrition in it. So I always try to think about how can I, pick the foods that are more nutritious. And then next I think of oils. So a lot of people, where they make their mistakes with cooking is they're cooking with inflammatory oils. So the name of the game with a lot of the swaps that I do is the difference between a food that nourishes and lowers inflammation versus a food that doesn't nourish, that takes nourishment away from your body and increases inflammation. So when you do something like corn oil, it actually takes more for your body to process, and it's also inflammatory. And then you want to swap in olive oil instead for that. Same thing if you're doing standard conventionally raised beef versus grass-fed. Same thing if you're doing chicken that has a lot of pesticides or hormones versus organic pasture-raised chicken that eats differently. And I know that there's a cost differential there, but again, a lot of people eat too much protein. You're really looking for, about the size of your hand or a deck of cards. For men, it's going to be a little bit more. So that's the general idea. Let's see. So I covered 3. Okay. And then nuts and seeds are a really big one for me. So the only caveat with that is if you have allergies. And of course, you'd want to get tested, by functional medicine or integrative medicine doctor. A lot of the, the testing they do for allergies just through the regular doctor's offices are non-conclusive. But nuts and seeds are just incredible for your brain. And there's a lot of nutrients in there that help focus. And because they're also naturally low in carbohydrates, higher in fats, they help to balance your blood sugar, and they taste amazing. lasting. The other day I made a pecan salmon where I just put mustard on top of a salmon and put pecans on there and baked it for 10 minutes. And it was like going to a gourmet restaurant. It's like delicious, easy, something you can always keep in your freezer. Store your nuts in your freezer so they don't go rancid. And then the last thing would be berries. I have to say I'm not a big fruit person, but I do love berries because they're not very sweet. They're extremely filling. So one of the things to consider is when you're eating certain foods like vegetables and berries is fiber content, but people don't realize why fiber is so important. So the big thing with fiber is that we have these invisible colonies of gut bugs that live in our stomach, and they eat the fiber, we don't. So when most people are eating a lot of processed carbohydrates, inflammatory things, that starves them, but it can also kill them. So we want to make sure that we're giving them plenty of food. So when you eat something like a cup of raspberries, you're probably getting around 8 grams of fiber. You need about 25 grams a day. So I do suggest that people do a fiber supplement, but also eat foods like berries, like cruciferous, like nuts that are naturally high in fiber.
Okay, so there's the 5, and I might just have to, I think I will go back and make sure that we put that in the email to everybody, the five healthiest ingredients everyone should shop for. It. Great heads up. And I do want to jump to, with just a few minutes left, I want to jump to something that's near and dear to my heart, snacks. So what kind of, as you wrote, no-brainer, no-cook snacks are you a fan of? Can you recommend a few things that maybe go along with cooking the salmon a little bit differently than everyone may have done it before, or the nuts and the berries that lead to, I'll say, a dessert or a snack? What do you consider a snack, first off? And what are your suggestions for the no-brainer, no-cook snacks?
Yeah, I think, I look at snacks a different way just because I work with a lot of doctors. So, the key thing to when it comes to dealing with hunger is actually your insulin. So a lot of times, when people are on the go or they're not eating enough in the morning, or maybe they ate something that had that was very rich in carbohydrates in the afternoon, around 3 o'clock, they'll probably have this blood sugar dip that goes down. So they're starving. So of course, the kinds of things they usually crave, and I'll be honest, I crave them too, is chocolate, chips, crackers. But that's exactly the opposite thing that what you should eat if you want to balance your insulin. So when you're balancing your blood sugar, what ends up happening is your brain works better, you maintain your weight, you can even lose weight, you nourish your body. When your insulin is swinging all over the place, it can be very harmful for your hormones, for your brain, for your organs. So, you want to think about, how can I take something that I like that's crunchy and turn it into something a little bit healthier? So, when I'm thinking of something crunchy, I'm thinking of maybe an almond cracker. So a cracker that has a little bit more nutrients, and then maybe I'll dip it in hummus to give me an added hit of fiber. So I'm going to do, because I have a gluten sensitivity, an almond cracker with some hummus. And then I'm going to add something that's also going to give me some nutrients on top of that, baby carrots. So we've got 2 crunchy things going on there. We've got the hummus. I didn't cook any of it. I just go to the cabinet, go to the fridge. I make myself a plate, and I make myself a cup of hot tea with that. So I feel like it's almost like a ritual. And I allow myself to have snacks every day if I'm hungry. If I'm not hungry, of course, I don't eat it. Then I think about, what if I'm craving something sweet? So with sweet, that's where berries are great. And I do this thing where I'll put cashew nut butter in a bowl, just a tablespoon, with some cacao nibs. So cacao nibs are just unsweetened cracked cocoa beans that soften up when you mix them in with things. And then I'll do fresh raspberries, and I eat that like a parfait. And of course, if you do okay with dairy, I can tolerate dairy well. You could do Greek yogurt with that. You want to go unsweetened though, and you could sweeten it with just a tiny bit of honey, or you can do stevia. Avoid artificial sweeteners. So that would be an option of a no-cook kind of sweet snack. And then what are some of the other things I wrote down here? And then I think in terms of people that crave things that are fatty, I always have a big bowl of avocados on hand. Avocados are amazing. You can just eat them, cut them in half, and put it like a tablespoon of salsa in the center and just eat it like that. My husband has a spice that he loves that has like jalapenos in it. And sometimes I'll just cut it up and put it in a bowl with a spoon. You can make a quick guacamole without having to chop all the stuff. You can just, do a little bit of lime and maybe, dice one vegetable, maybe a jalapeno or tomato, and eat guacamole that way. And you can do some sliced cucumbers with it, or gluten-free crackers. You can do a handful of corn chips. Just make sure they're organic, because corn is GMO. And you could do an avocado toast. And, if you don't want to do the bread, you can slice sweet potato and put the slices of sweet potato in your toaster oven. That's pretty awesome. So there's a lot of ways to spin these. And, if you have frozen shrimp, you can make a little avocado shrimp salad. So you don't have to think of a snack as just junk food. It can be a mini meal, but you do want to think, what's my craving first? Is it sweet, fatty, or salty? And then how am I going to address that? And how am I going to season it and flavor it to make it taste amazing? Because once you kind of get into that healthier snack, the less you want to run to the vending machine or the corner store to get the Snickers bar or whatever it is that you usually snack on.
And I have to support that statement in that a long time ago now, that was my go-to. Whatever Hershey's bar or something like that. Now I admit, and you do see me drinking a coffee here, a Dunkin' Donuts, specifically coffee, I still have a soft spot, literally, for donuts. I mean, I just do, and coffees. But outside of that, I have really tried. I've tried a lot of these, and I will say happily, I've found that they're awesome. And I'll even take your commentary on this. I love the roasted almonds. I don't know if they're healthy or not healthy. I think they're healthy, but I love those. But I've stayed away from cashews because I was told they're not. So is that accurate or inaccurate?
Yeah, there was actually a book out that talked about the toxicity of some foods. So I don't really buy into that, just because, our systems have adapted to handle certain foods. And one of the reasons why they say cashew is bad is because it's part of the poison ivy family. But, it really depends on your personal, what's happening with you genetically, what's happening with your gut health. I've actually had all this very advanced testing. So I know I don't react to cashews. I actually don't have any nut allergies, and I can tolerate dairy. But, nuts, seeds, dairy, gluten, eggs, sesame, these are the top 10 allergens. So, if you have some kind of bacterial gut infection, you may have a sensitivity to one of these foods. But, certain foods like nightshades can be problematic for people with autoimmune, but these are people that already have compromised immune function. So this is where we run into trouble. But I mean, honestly, I eat cashews on a regular basis, and I have no issue with them. So I don't really look at what family the food belongs to. I look at the nutritional profile, and then if I'm coaching someone, if they've had the testing to see if it's a reactive food for them. And I obviously know what's reactive for me. Okay,
and I just I'm allergic to poison ivy, so I never knew that about cashews. That's
well, maybe cashews might not be right for you.
That's right. I'll stick with the almonds. So, and I have to share this. I read the book *Sapiens* a couple of years ago, and in the book, and that's the author is Yuval Noah Harari, and hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. I believe I have it right. And in *Sapiens*, he actually writes about how milk, of all things, is proof of the continued evolution of humans, because at one point there was a very small number, there had been a very small number of adults that could tolerate dairy. And now that number is in the 30 to 35% range. So it's a proof of our continued evolution as human beings.
Yeah, and that also depends on what region you come from, what your heritage is, what your background is. Like certain cultures can't tolerate alcohol. Certain cultures, like people that live in the Swiss mountains, they get a lot of nutrients from grass-fed cheese that has a lot of omega-3 fatty acids. But, if you're of African-American descent, there's a chance that you're lactose intolerant. And, it's more about how does your body handle or process it, is whether or not the food is good. Well, one thing I can say is vegetables are pretty much great for you across the board.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
That is a good one.
Yeah.
Well, and I being Italian, bread is my kryptonite. I want to eat as much of it as possible, but I mean, a week at it, and I see the evidence, I'll say. So we're going to wrap it up in just a moment here, but I would like your thoughts on the word diet, and not necessarily diet as in I'm out there trying to lose weight kind of diet, how do you and in your awesome writing and on the website, and again, that's Skinny Chef. I want to make sure it's skinnychef.com. How do you present the idea of what's the right diet or eating program for those that would be interested in finding that out?
Yeah. So, on the website, I don't really, give us one specific diet. And there's a reason for that is because people are very bio-individual. So that what that means is, your hormones, what's happening with your gut health, and there's genetics, there's so many different factors in how you process foods. So I work right now with a lot of integrated and functional medicine doctors who do advanced testing just on that. So you can think of the ultimate in biohacking. You know how you process fats, you know how you process carbs, you know how you process protein. So once I went through all that testing myself, I came to realize that, keto diet isn't great for me. Paleo diet with some carbs that are not in the paleo umbrella works best for me. So it is kind of a trial and error to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you do a program and work with these practitioners, they can do the testing to figure out what's best for you. But you also have to realize as you age, you need different things. So a lot of people have issues where they can't sleep at night because they're doing a strict paleo diet, and that makes their stress hormone, cortisol, go crazy. So a lot of people that are doing things like CrossFit, they're doing just meat and protein. They don't know why they can't sleep is because then, all the stress hormones or insulin is maybe swinging around. They need a little bit of carb. But when I'm saying carbohydrate, I don't mean a big bowl of pasta. I mean a half a sweet potato or a handful of gluten-free crackers. So it's like kind of interesting. You have to really know your body, and you know your body through experimenting, just like you're not, maybe don't do bread for a week, or maybe you see, could I just do a half a slice of bread and I don't feel like I have to eat a ton of it. Or if I eat one slice, do I feel like I have to have a whole loaf? Because that is basically impacting insulin and impacting how you process it. Am I addicted to certain foods? Why is that? When I feel tired, what am I eating? What if I try this? How does caffeine affect me? So, there really is not a one size fits all. But one thing in just understanding how to do things in a more healthful way is really what I said about inflammation. Anytime you can switch an inflammatory ingredient for something that's less inflammatory. So that means higher nutrition, superfood, less pesticides, organic, grass-fed, pasture-raised. Then that's going to help you. That's going to help balance your insulin as well. That's going to bring down inflammation in your body. But I've tried every diet out there. I used to work for Atkins. I've worked for ketogenic companies. I've done paleo. I've done vegan, vegetarian. So right now, the diet that works best for my genetics and my body is, a paleo-esque diet with a little handful of carbs that may or may not have gluten-free grains. I don't eat a lot of grains or beans, but I may do something that has like sorghum or one of those gluten-free grains.
Okay. So with that, can those watching that are interested go to your site and maybe get a little bit more about the paleo diet or paleo foods and so on, and then of course reach out to you?
Yeah, on the site there isn't a lot of information about paleo, but I do health coaching, so people can absolutely reach out with questions. There's an email there, and when I work with clients, I do meal plans for them, but I also do a very thorough health history. So I understand, what they're dealing with in terms of hormonal imbalance, gut health. I do recommend them out to a lot of doctors that I've worked with if they want to go way deeper, but we usually do a plan that works for them, but also works within the foods they love, because I never want anyone to feel deprived.
No, we don't want to do that. Right. I want to keep eating that bacon every now and then, and that donut, because I just can't.
You know what? Maybe it's about doing a half a donut and sticking a half in the freezer and eating berries on the side.
All right. Well, it's funny you say that. I always joked around back in the day, I'll say, about my candy bar. I would break it in half and throw half away, and it's a half-calorie candy bar. So anyway, with that, Jennifer Iserloh, thank you so much. You gave us just about 40 minutes of your time, which we really appreciate. Skinnychef.com. Please go find Jennifer, and I will see you again soon, and really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. My pleasure.